Okay. Hi, Nick and Carmen. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Jennifer, and thank you for having us. And Nick, thanks for joining the call or the conversation at, pulling you in at the, last minute, kind of.
I'm so excited you connected us.
Thank you guys so much. It's an honor and a privilege.
So I would love to, I'm just going to introduce myself really quick and get it out of the way because I would love to hear about both of you and from both of you. My name is Jennifer. I'm on the board of Generation Lyme, and we're here for Generation Lyme Day to honor our community of Lyme patients and supporters. And we're here to talk about perspective and the role that that's played in our lives, and specifically in the role that it's played in Nick and Carmen's lives. And this was their idea to talk about. So I'm really excited to hear from both of you. So why don't you two introduce yourselves? I'd love to hear a little bit about you. And why don't we start with Carmen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen, and I have been battling Lyme disease. I was actually diagnosed in 1999. And it took them a long time to determine that what I was facing was Lyme disease. And I won't go into, all the ugly details, but I know that everybody in our community can relate to, the long battles with doctors and the denials and the frustrations and the fears, which, catapulting now. I've been battling this disease for now probably 26, 27 years now. And it's been a long, tough journey. And, I found myself, getting very discouraged, and frustrated, with the process. And fortunately, we have social media now with all its evils and benefits, in our community. It's actually been a blessing. So thank goodness that we have this community that we can fall back on and get support from. So thank you for Generation Lyme for doing so much of that.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for putting that so well. It really is a light in what can be an unbelievably dark place. So how about you, Nick?
So my name is Nic Turinski. I'm 39 years old. I was born and raised on sports. Basketball was my first love. I got sick when I was a kid, but I didn't get any symptoms until I was like 18 or 19. I had a really good, healthy childhood, healthy food. I didn't really have any trauma until I was 18 or 19. Basically went from like dunking a basketball to I couldn't even get off my couch. They blamed it on like a leg length discrepancy, psychosomatic. I basically would shuffle a block, shuffle 2 blocks, got up to like a couple miles, then used the pool, qigong, stopped playing basketball. Kind of carried on like that for like 10 or 15 years, just kept getting worse and worse. I diagnosed myself. They told me there's no way that I'd still be living the way I was with chronic Lyme disease. Diagnosed myself through hygienics and a chiropractor. Started treatment. Basically, they gave me 3 antibiotics and Plaquenil. Gave me a severe seizure. Put me on walking aids. So basically, yeah. Then after that, we took a break for a while. Then we moved down to Eugene, Oregon, where I got mold toxicity. I almost died. I was completely bedridden for 2 years. But I didn't give up. My friends wanted to install a TV. I told them the only way I can fight is with my mind. So basically, I sat and incubated for 2 years. I read, I meditated. And for me, I focus a lot on the opportunities that a challenge presents. So for me, Lyme disease forced me to no longer run from my problems. My mother was a schizophrenic when I was 14 years old, completely addicted to exercise. I'd exercise like 12 hours a day. It forced me, to do some deep self-cultivation, some inventory, stopped me in my tracks, and it forced me to no longer run from my problems. So one of the hardest things in my life, but also one of the biggest opportunities and lots of gifts that, I'll go into a little bit more later on.
I have a couple of responses. That was a beautifully succinct statement on such a long and difficult story. So as a Lyme patient who dealing with brain fog over the years, and hearing your story, really impressed with how well you just put that all together, because that's you make it sound easy and it's not. So thank you
Well,
for sharing all of that.
honestly, I think we rise to the occasion. Like when I look back, because it's really hard. So now I'm out of my bed for about 6 hours, 5 to 6 hours a day. When I'm back in my bed, I don't know how I did it for 2 years. But as human beings, we rise to the occasion, and then when we're out of it, then we can kind of look back. Like I said, I look back and I don't know how I did it, but it gave me so much inner strength and spiritual growth. It's crazy.
I think that's a beautiful statement, and personally, I agree with that feeling, and I'd love to hear more about that. But thank you both for sharing such beautiful statements already. So I'd love to hear a little more about what perspective, because it's kind of a broad term, what that means to you just generally, and what that has meant to you, even though you've covered it a little bit, but maybe we can go a little more in depth. Like how has that impacted your journey even more than you've already explained?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I think first and foremost, look at diseases, adversities, anything that goes wrong is an opportunity to rise and become the best version of yourself. I look at problems as logistics to be solved. And then one of the things, I've always been a compassionate, empathetic person, but so when I first was bedridden, we didn't really know I was going to make it. I always knew in my heart I but I didn't want to. I didn't want it to be for nothing. So I started making the videos because I didn't want it to be for nothing, and I wanted to help the people in the future. But one thing about perspective is, if you can put yourself in a perspective of empathy and compassion for another person who has it worse than you, then that's really advantageous to your journey. First and foremost, it gets you out of the cycle of self-pity. And then it also, our brains will reward us because we are wired to be interconnected. And so when I first started making videos, it was really hard to put myself out there in a compromised, vulnerable position, especially being like an ex-athlete and a very strong person. But like I soon realized it was a powerful way to connect with people, to relate with people, and it's very rewarding. It became very rewarding for me. And so I think if you can, anytime you're going through hard times, there's always people, get up. If you can think about empathy, compassion for other people, like I said, breaks the self-pity, but it also reminds you you're not in this alone, and we're all interconnected.
Couldn't have
I love
said that
that, Nic.
if I tried.
That's awesome.
It's so beautiful. And that's really amazing, because it's such a great point on not just moving forward, but how healing it is for you,
Yeah.
on top of being healing for other people. And you kind of create a cycle of healing when you've been in a cycle of something more destructive. So
Yep.
Thank you. How about you, Carmen?
But for me, perspective is, just taking a step back. I think, so many times we look at, these moments of adversities as, woe is me, why me? And I think for me, it actually gave me a moment of pause, because I wasn't working anymore. Unfortunately, I can't work right now. My treatment was, definitely knocked me, on my butt, like so many other people. So it actually gave me a moment of pause to just kind of reflect, on my life, on, what it is that I want to do. How do I want to see my life? How do I want to envision my future and my health? And, kind of send that positive energy out there, not just within myself, but to others as well. And for me, it's like it's allowed me just to kind of regroup, my life, and kind of eliminate a lot of the toxicities, not just environmentally, but emotionally, spiritually, and kind of help me grow that way, rather than saying to myself, oh, I'm never going to be the same again. It's like, no, how can I improve myself, and how can I help enrich others' lives who are going through the same thing? Because now that I'm healing, I now have the capacity to extend that to someone else, even if it's just by a phone call, a conversation, going for a walk together, praying together, any little thing. I think it's important that once we've reached that other side, which I know many of us are working towards, that it's important to reach back and help someone else.
That's also incredibly beautiful. And I'm really excited and surprised. I mean, I knew you would both say incredible things, but I have to admit I'm a little surprised by how quickly this conversation on perspective is turning toward helping others, and how they're kind of like so deeply, these subjects are so deeply intertwined in our own healing, and how key that's been for both of you. I just think that's really interesting, because it wasn't like I didn't come into this conversation with the intention of being like, so this is why you have to help other people. But it just ended up being that we've all come together talking about how somehow in the depths, the perspective, like this certain mindset has come through that involved empathy and compassion, and kind of creating giving each person a mission to kind of help others, and how that caused healing. And I think we didn't talk about this beforehand, but that's really cool.
I think that interconnectedness is just so critical. It's such a critical piece in healing, is to be able to connect with others. And as Nic had mentioned, having that, sharing that empathy and compassion with other people, in their healing journey is such a critical point in our healing journeys for all of us.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, I think what it stems from, the opposite of suffering is joy. And I think one of the biggest ways to joy is to helping another person. So when you're in the fire of suffering, and you're digging deep, your intuition, your spirit, or whatever, it understands the quickest, most pure way to joy is helping another person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. So that being said, what sort of advice do you have any advice that you give to people who are really in the thick of it, and especially without, I know from like a generation Lyme and me personally, I try to be as careful as possible about ever even coming off like I'm telling somebody how to feel, but and it can be really hard when someone is in the middle of the worst, when and I've been there. I feel like we've probably all been there, when it's so hard not to feel bad. So what sort of advice do you have for helping people step out of it mentally or emotionally or spiritually, however they can, without being overly prescriptive and inviting them? You know what I mean?
I think changing that mindset is, like, for me, was step one. And a lot of changing that mindset was just reading and starting a journal of gratitude and writing my affirmations out every single morning when I woke up. I would, listen to a motivational podcast, read motivational books, really, really trying to connect with myself spiritually, and trying to motivate myself just to kind of, because there's lots of science out there that actually shows that when you are changing your mindset, that it actually changes the synapses in your brain, which is productive to healing. And for me, that was critical. I still do my journaling. I do my three things that I am grateful for every day. I have a eraser board that I write things down. Those are just like simple things that you can, start your day with, because I know some days some of us can't even get out of bed. I know many days it's difficult for me just to even, roll out of bed. But those are simple things that you can do, from the comfort of your own, bed, or, in front of the TV, but not just sitting there and just saying, this is never going to end, changing that mindset to what, I am going to overcome this. This is just a small moment, a dot on the life timeline of my life, and I am going to overcome it, and life is going to be better. And listening to a lot of those motivational and affirmations, whether it's podcasts or books, whatever it is, works for you. I think for me has really helped, and talking to others and reaching out and helping someone else always kind of helps to kind of get you out of that moment, and understanding that adversity is part of growth. It's part of, that personal development, spiritual development. And when you come out of it, I think we just come out of it a just much brighter, stronger, more vibrant person.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with her. I'm huge on the journal of gratitude every morning, every night. And I think one of the main things I recommend for people with Lyme disease is have a purpose and a passion outside of the Lyme space. So for me, it's my business. So anytime, especially when I was bedridden, I only had 30 minutes or an hour. Now I have an hour. Everything I've accomplished is 30 minutes or 1 hour of work. And so if you have a purpose or a passion outside of Lyme disease, so for me, when those negative loop keeps running around. So for me, I use my purpose and a passion as a rudder to bring my mind back to positive water. So, if am I ever going to get my life back? And then no. So what do I need to do for my design tomorrow? What colors do I need to do? And then just constantly use that as a rudder to bring your mind back to positive waters. And I think that's one of the huge ones. And it doesn't have to be a business per se, but it has to be some sort of long-term goal that you can constantly use your mind to basically use that as a rudder to bring your mind back to positive waters. And I think, and then also what Carmen touched on, neuroplasticity, perspective, gratitude, all that. These are all tools and mindset that need to be cultivated on a daily basis. And so as human beings, it's called mental immunity. As something happens in Buddhism, it's called the law of two arrows. The thing that happens, goes wrong, and then the subsequent arrows are how we react to it. So for us, we can react out of emotions and sadness and anger, or we can use rational thought. And then over time, so for me, when I have a convulsion fit, I tell myself, they're very uncomfortable, but I tell myself, this is a blessing. This means my legs are alive and I'm going to get them back. And Carmen touched on it. This is not going to take me under. It's not going to overwhelm me. This is very unfortunate. And then over time, as you practice mental immunity, you will literally develop new neural pathways called neuroplasticity. And then the positive affirmations are huge. I used to do those all the time. They didn't really stick, but as I started getting the bacteria down, they are working. So just keep, I know it's hard for people, cognitive abilities. I'm huge on reading like Carmen, but I understand a lot of people can't. So just all day long, I'm healthy and strong. I love myself. I'm going to get over this, and just go on that. Just keep breaking that negative loop cycle.
These
Absolutely.
are wonderful, wonderful tools, I think, because it's not just this vague, think yourself out of the problem kind of advice. You're actually providing like practical tools that people can use and at varying levels of like symptom, like feeling that day, So if you're feeling a little bit better and you can get out of bed, you can go for a walk, then that can be something that you can add to your routine, or even just to that one day to get yourself out of the space. That was something that you said, Carmen, and also the journaling for both of you. But I think, as we all know, and many of us have been there, often Lyme patients can't read or write or even like sit and listen to something. And that is when like the thought of changing your perspective or getting out of the loop is so hard. But I think you've both just provided really great tools just now. Even like the metaphor of a rudder getting you back on track is really helpful, even if it only is like a small portion of your day, and like conserving energy to use for a small window of the day where you can use that rudder of something else to guide you back, even if it's a thought like, this is temporary. This is not going to last forever. This piece of my body that's convulsing is alive. It sucks in the moment, but reminding yourself that it's in the moment. And I feel like I would venture to guess that a lot of us who've gone through it have like these tiny little things, big to small, but these tiny little things that have gotten us through the hardest days when reading, writing, walking, connecting weren't an option. But a small mantra is great.
Can I ask you guys a quick question?
Of course.
So for me, I've thought about this for a really long time, and I'd love to get you guys' opinion. So how does one have a catalyst for spiritual, emotional growth without a Lyme disease or a big, something really, really wrong happening? The only thing I can ever come up with is it's constantly put yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
And I just kind of would, if you guys have an opinion on that.
I think when people are at their or have their like for me, I've tried to kind of looked at my illness as more of a spiritual awakening of sorts, because it's allowed me to again reflect on a lot of my life and my environment and how I need to change certain things in order to continue to be healthy. But how I look at it, I'm sorry, what was your question again, Nick?
Do you think you would have had that spiritual awakening without the adversity of Lyme disease?
No,
And if
not at
not,
all.
that's my question. How do we
Not
invoke
not
that?
to this degree.
Yeah.
Not to this degree at all.
That's why I laugh. It's not funny, but that's why I sort of smiled when you asked, because it's a really understandable question coming from this end of things, I guess. But I'm guessing probably it's like no with an asterisk is my answer. Like no without hardship. But I think the thing that you said about putting yourself in someone else's shoes could actually do it, because it's just whatever kind of puts you in enough of a state to open yourself up for a certain degree of empathy and compassion, so that you might be willing to understand more, and to realize that there's so much you don't understand and can't understand, so that you're just open. And that can happen through adversity, or maybe through the openness to the adversity of others, and the willingness to just be present for that. I also just tend to think, for the most, everybody has something. Everybody has something that is, everybody's got something that is rough, and you just probably don't know what it is. And if they don't have it, it's just, they don't have it yet.
Yeah, like you said, everyone's got suffering.
Everyone's got, and so I don't think that makes, just people with Lyme disease the most elevated population in the world, in the world. Like, but it does, suffering definitely, I agree, catalyzes change, because you're working so hard on healing yourself. You have to try hard. It's like inevitable that you're going to, as you said, Nick, really try to just work out all your problems.
Yeah, well, I think the only thing I can come up with is like self-imposed suffering, not like, like extreme training, or, what I'm saying, like stuff kind of like Navy SEAL, where you push yourself past a point that something happens and you kind of transcend into a transformation.
Yeah.
But I don't think too many people are going to voluntarily take that on.
So
Probably
for me, since I spent so many days, at home ill, there was many days that weeks that I just couldn't leave the house. So I started raising butterflies. And I was watching my butterflies. I would literally watch the butterfly cage literally for hours, and watching the caterpillars and how they would interact with each other. Watching the butterflies outside laying eggs. And so I had this terrarium where I housed all of my caterpillars, and I would watch the whole process from caterpillar to pupa, and eventually they hatch out into a butterfly. And so I started to use that as my my metaphor, for my life and for my healing. And through my life and through my Lyme healing, we have to go through this dark transition in order to come out this beautiful butterfly in the end, and fly. And so when you're watching a butterfly struggle to try to come out of that cocoon, when they're ready and they come out, and you see them, slip their wings out, and their wings are, crumpled and wet, and they're starting to, extend their wings, and it takes them a couple hours to dry. And then once they're dry, then you release them and you let them, fly in the wind. The way I see where I am in my journey is like, I'm emerging from that pupa phase through my Lyme healing, and I'm starting to extend my wings. My wings are not fully extended yet, but I'm getting there. And once this is all over, I'll be that beautiful butterfly in the wind. And so will you.
Yeah, you're not going to be the same. You're going to be much better.
That's such a beautiful image. Thank you so much. I think that's a really good place to end. Is anyone have anything else to add? I mean, I'm gonna go cry over there for a few minutes. Happy, joyous tears of gratitude.
Oh.
That was really, really lovely.
So I just wanted to say like a couple books that I really, really enjoy that I read, which I'm sure Nic has probably already read, is Can't Hurt Me and The Book of Joy.
Yeah.
Those are two of my favorite books. I love those books. And Can't Hurt Me is a really rough book, but if you don't mind the foul language, it's an amazing story of a man who came out. He beat so many odds and overcame so much adversity. It's an amazing story. Obviously, I listened to it on audiobook. Definitely recommend that. And I also recommend for like a lot of like my trying to center myself. I do a lot of alternate nostril breathing, and that really kind of helps me in my meditation, because we have to, in Lyme disease, we always talk about we need to detox. Well, you also need to detox your brain, and you need to detox with the breath as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. The Book of Joy is like the Bible for me.
I love that book.
Yeah, and anyone with Lyme disease, yes, please pick up the Book of Joy and take in as little or as much as you can. And I would say The Art of Learning is another really good one, and Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Every red light turns into a very rewarding green light in the end.
Green Light was awesome. Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Not sponsored, just well loved. All books that I have to read because
Green
I
Light.
haven't read any of them.
If you listen to Green Light, you have to do it on audiobook, because Matthew McConaughey narrates it himself, and he does such an amazing job.
Can't do. Seems like can't do that any other way. Yeah. Thank you for the recommendations. Oh my goodness.
Thank you so much for having us on.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you so much.
Great seeing you.
Happy Gen Lyme Day, right?
Nice to meet you guys. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.